Welcome to the Roll Call Podcast, a Clovercrest Media Group sports presentation. Well, the 2020 season, boys, is in the books. The Los Angeles Dodgers, after 150 years of futility, have finally, I joke, I'll never forget the 1988 World Series, the Kirk Gibson home run. The Earl Hershiser was one of the top pitchers in baseball. He and Doc Gooden were really the cream of the crop at that point. It was something else. So I gotta say, I'm so excited for the Dodgers. I really am. Congratulations to them. Long time coming. They've been so good for the last 8 years. They've been so close so many times, JJ. I know they're not our favorite teams, Tampa or the Dodgers, but just your thoughts on what I think was one heck of a World Series. And we'll certainly get into all the big moves, Blake Snell and Justin Turner. But just overall, what do you think of this series, JJ?
Well, before I congratulate the Dodgers for winning the championship, I actually would like to congratulate the MLB in general for, putting the season out that they did with the unprecedented events that has occurred in the world within the last year or so. I really think that the MLB really did a great performance in the fact that in the playoffs, the way they had the bubbles for all the playoff rounds, and ultimately both the teams in Tampa Bay and LA ended up playing the series in Texas, and it didn't seem to really affect gameplay at all. Now, when it comes to the Dodgers, I'm really happy for them. They're a team that really dealt with several heartbreaks throughout the last 5 years. They were victims to the Astros cheating. And it's nice to see a guy like Kershaw, who, arguably is an all-time great, finally get a ring and solidify himself as a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, speaking of Kershaw, you mentioned that he's obviously an all-time regular season great. Up until the World Series, he was kind of known as a bust in the playoffs. But he pitched 2 games in the World Series, and he looked phenomenal. And, I mean, he really was a key part of that World Series championship for the Dodgers, which is nice because, Clayton Kershaw, he's a guy, he's never really done anything wrong. He's never gotten in trouble off the field. He's a lifelong Dodger. So it's kind of like Ryan Zimmerman winning one with the Nationals last season. It's a good feeling for him, and you feel good as it's like Kobe Bryant and his LA championships. Someone who stays with one team for a long time, you always root for those guys to get the rings.
Corey Seager was the MVP of this series. Randy Arozarena might have been the breakout star of this postseason, and really just a lights-out player. Came out of the big stage and did just an outstanding job. And I know just so the audience knows, the three of us have been arguing via text over the last couple of days about Randy Arozarena, and I've tried to be really clear on this, that this isn't me hating on Randy Arozarena, just like in 1998 when I found out Bernie Williams had surpassed Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth for home runs in the World Series. I thought, wow, or in the postseason, I thought, maybe there's something wrong with the way we're keeping the records in the postseason. I love Bernie, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't seem right. And I think what people don't understand is, a long time ago, the American League and the National League played, and the season ended, and the World Series happened.
Yeah.
And then they split into 2 divisions. And then there was a pennant in the World Series. Then in 95, we added a wild card. And so every time we add more rounds this year, 4 rounds to a postseason, and don't forget the Rays played nearly the maximum in every single series. So my point was Randy Arozarena, certainly all the hits, all the home runs, but he did it in significantly more games than the records that he broke. And so all I say is, put it into perspective a little bit, slightly temper expectations. I think this guy's going to be a really good ball player for a really long time. I don't think he's going to hit 50 home runs next year, though. I don't think he's going to hit 350. I think he's a good player. He's a good piece. And again, as the Rays always do, JJ, they find guys like this, and that's why the Rays are how good they are. But I said yesterday, and I'll stand by it, look at Yandy Diaz, who looked like he was going to be a breakout star for them, or Carl Crawford going back some years.
Yeah.
They end up being pretty good, but never quite great. And so, again, I would just say great series for Randy. If they win the World Series, he's probably the MVP, I would say, JJ.
Oh yeah, with all contests, what he's been able to do throughout the whole playoff run and in the World Series. Randy's their guy moving forward. It looks like they actually found a star in that team. The Rays have always been a great collection of guys, but they never really stood out. There's never been a star guy, and that's why I feel we've also had the conversation of how Kevin Cash feels like he's the star of the team, but that's a conversation we'll have for later. But, when it comes to Randy, and we had the debate whether his numbers and the numbers of games he played, my thing is, for you to have playoff numbers, you got to have playoff games. And I'm not going to take away credit from Randy if he's doing these things in the playoffs, regardless of the number of games he's playing. And he's just given more opportunities, and he's capitalizing on them. So I'm not going to take away any credit from him for that.
Yeah, I think in this situation, you kind of have to pay less attention to the records he broke, more as, he was just given, like JJ said, he was given the opportunity and he capitalized in those moments. He hit big home runs. He had big base hits, he overall phenomenal player. He's not to mention they brought him in, I heard, only to be like a speed and defensive guy. So maybe someone you could put in on defense late in the game, or someone you can pinch run, score a run in a time of need. But he, right off the bat, right when the playoffs started, he showed that he's much more than that. And right at the bottom of the screen, Joe, you had something about the Cardinals down there. They traded away a Rosarena, and, a couple years ago, they traded away our guy, Mr. Big Chest Luke Voigt. So you got to think if they have those two, things would be looking up for the Cardinals in the future.
Listen, I'm big on Randy. I think Randy's going to be a really good player. Maybe good player. I don't know about really good. That's yet to be determined. But I did see the hype. A lot of commentators talking about, like, oh, maybe they should give him the Barry Bonds treatment. Just walk him and give him the base. Pause. This kid is not there yet, okay? That's not overhype him. Like I said, I'm glad it looks like the Rays have found a star within their team. So they should be happy about that. But this kid still has a lot to prove before he's given star treatment.
That just a quick little thing here, JJ, that when you said that thing about Barry Bonds, it reminded me of when ESPN was showing a Yankees game and Mike Ford hit a home run and they compared his swing to Babe Ruth. And I was just like, oh no, you cannot compare a backup first baseman, especially a guy like Mike Ford, to Babe Ruth. Like, come on.
It's cute, isn't it? It's cute. This is my other thing too. I think, a guy like a Rosarena comes out of nowhere. And, again, you mentioned the whole purpose of him being there originally wasn't because they thought he was going to be a big superstar. He's a 25-year-old with no major league experience.
Yeah.
Guy who had a pretty good glove. Again, you mentioned he's got the speed. I don't think anybody saw this coming, and again, not to go like way old school on everybody, but in 1998, the Yankees had a fellow by the name of Shane Spencer who hit 10 home runs in September and was a beast in the postseason, and then basically played like garbage for the rest of his career. I also remember in 1991, the Yankees had a guy by the name of Kevin Moss who hit 21 home runs, I think, in 47 games. Kind of like half the games Gary Sanchez had to hit 20. And everybody was like, oh boy, does he DH? Do we move Mattingly to the outfield? And then Kevin Moss never hit more than 10 in a season for the remainder of his couple of years with the Yankees before he disappeared into obscurity. So again, no scouting report on Randy Arozarena, not like a top prospect of this team. He had that advantage, but I will say this, over the course of 4 rounds, JJ, teams certainly should have understood a little bit of where the damage was coming from, and the fact that they couldn't stop him certainly gives me a reason, like you say, JJ, to think that, maybe they have found a star here, a breakout guy. 2021 is going to be interesting for a lot of reasons, and I think for Randy Arozarena, it's going to be, can I continue now that there's a scouting report on me and people know how to sort of attack me, can he still keep that up? Again, I don't think he's going to hit 50 home runs, but there's no reason this guy can't be a 30-homer guy from the looks of it. So
Randy has solidified himself as the guy in a group of guys. because that's how the Rays have always been viewed. Like I said earlier, he's the guy now. So going into 2021, the card is out. He's the one that people have to worry about. So I'm very interested to see how he progresses or declines as his career advances. Because as a rookie in the playoff run, I haven't seen a run like this in quite a while.
So let's talk about this because it's inevitable that it was going to come up. And I know everybody's got feelings on this. Kevin Cash, who we talked about as being such a great manager, and he still is. He still is. But his decision to take Blake Snell out with 1 out in the 5th inning, when the next 3 hitters up were 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. Now they weren't 1 for 4 with 1 strikeout and a walk, JJ. This was dominance.
I was just saying, put it in context. Can you name the top 3 guys? Isn't it Betts, Seager, and was Bellinger batting 3 in that game, or am I wrong?
I think Bellinger was 6th in that game, batting 6th.
Trying to remember all the hits as they ensued. Let me pull this one up. Yeah, all right. Next 3 hitters were Betts, Seager, and Turner. 0 for 6 strikeouts. And then Betts came up and doubled off Anderson, 2nd and 3rd. He scores on. I mean, again, we could probably spend a whole show talking about how good Mookie Betts is, and whether or not maybe Mookie Betts, maybe he's the best player in baseball right now. It's hard, again, everybody knows my feelings on Mike Trout. With that in mind, looking at what Mookie Betts did, the money Mookie Betts earned, the contract he got, and then he goes and wins a championship, the 2nd of his career.
That's value.
It's a pretty good ball player, dude. I mean, again, I think at the end of the day, here's the other thing, too. If you look at the biggest contracts in baseball, you're talking about Garrett Cole. You're talking about Zach Greinke. Mm-hmm. You're talking Harper.
Giancarlo.
You're talking Giancarlo. You're talking about all guys who are postseason performers whose teams have either been in the World Series or played for the World Series. Mm-hmm. Then you got Mike Trout.
Harper.
Then you got Mike Trout. And you got Manny Machado. And those guys. You got the guys that just put up gaudy numbers and whose teams don't win games. Manny Machado is a Mike Trout. He's just a guy that puts up great numbers, but when the big moments happen, he's just not there. So is Mookie Betts the best player in baseball, JJ?
Currently, it's undeniable. He has showed how he has literally switched the pendulum of power and made the Dodgers a championship caliber team, just like he did with the Red Sox back in 2018. It's undeniable the value that Mookie Betts brings, and that's not only at the plate. He made so many defensive plays throughout the playoff series that I can't even count them in my hands because he's that good. Mookie Betts is a phenomenal player, and to your Manny Machado point, it looks like that's Tata's team now. Or am I wrong?
Sure. Yeah. No, you're probably right. And again, I think if you look at the Yankees, right? I mean, I said it a couple of weeks ago, and I was being a little I don't know what the word I want to say is. Maybe I was just being a jerk. I said this team is Giancarlo Stanton and Garrett Cole's. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still Judge's team. And the idea that the Padres are Tatis's team, I think tells you all you need to know about Manny Machado.
Absolutely.
And I think if some young buckaroo were to come up now, some 5-tool superstar for the Angels, I think that's the guy you're looking at really long term, because while Trout's going to be there for a long time, here's the Angels will need to spend so much money to get pitchers.
Mm-hmm. And what they got going against them too is the fact that they got the Dodgers in the same avenue. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I want to play with the Dodgers or do I want to go with the Angels? You know what I mean? So they have that going against them. Mm-hmm. The fact that they don't really have a history of having success too also is I can't even think of the words. Just doesn't benefit them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about, obviously, Mike Trout, what's he played in? I think he's played in one postseason series. Is that right?
Yes.
Someone like Manny Machado with the Padres, I just looked it up here on my computer. Manny Machado's played in 8 postseason series. So, I mean, even like comparing those two, yeah, I think the talent goes a little bit towards Trout, but Machado's played in eight postseason series, and he's played in a World Series before. That's something Trout hasn't done.
Lucas, Mike Trout has 60 games to make the playoffs, and even 60 games wasn't enough.
Nope. And you called it at the beginning of the season. You said that Mike Trout doesn't make the postseason this year. That tells you his true value. And
JJ, how many more teams do they have to put into the postseason before Trout can get there?
No, and that's a serious point. But hey, I want to go back to our point about Blake
Snell
Snell, because I don't want to
time
get
out.
sorry.
Slow down. Here's the reason I mentioned that, and that was not to get off track. So I apologize. I was sort of setting you guys up because again, Blake Snell, 2018 Cy Young Award winner, is getting ready to square up against Mookie Betts, who's 0 for 2 in the game with 2 strikeouts.
Yeah.
But, and this is why, again, this is kind of me getting Kevin Cash's back for a second. Mookie Betts is 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. Doesn't make me feel like you're going to strike him out a third time. And so I wonder, this is a situation where, I mean, how could the analytics tell you that 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, you should take him out because it's the third time around? This is why I'm saying I don't think this was analytics' fault. I think this was Kevin Cash actually taking the data he had, overthinking the data, and doing what I always say. Because I think if you're 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, the chances of those guys being 0 for 9 with 9 strikeouts is 0. Even when Blake Snell or Garrett Cole or Jacob deGrom's on the mound. That's hard to do. So I understand what Kevin Cash was doing, but, and this is a point I made on Keys to the City yesterday, or the day after the World Series. If the Rays win that game 1-0, they got to play Game 7 the next day. And here's the situation Tampa would have been in. Say they keep Snell into the 8th inning. It's 1-0. Maybe they bring Castillo, one of those guys, in, and whoever, and they pitch 1 inning, close it down. You go into Game 7, Walker Buehler against Charlie Morton, and that's definitely in favor of Walker Buehler and the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But not only you have Charlie Morton, you have Glasnow will pitch an inning. If you had gotten 8 innings from Snell, everybody is rested, and you're going to need that. So this is my other thought about what Kevin Cash did was, I understand we got to win right now, but you do have to think about tomorrow. You do have to think about if we win Game 6, we have to play Game 7.
But you got to get to a Game 7, Joe.
No, I understand that, but the guy who was pitching at the time, JJ, gave you no reason to think he needed the help. And tomorrow, you're probably going to need help. I like Charlie Morton, and we know Morton's pitched, I think, in 3 or 4 clinchers. And he's great in those kinds of games.
Joe,
but Walker Buehler's better.
Let me ask you something. If Tampa Bay wins that game 1-0 and go to Game 7, are we all thinking the Dodgers are blowing it again?
Yeah.
Tampa Bay would have all the momentum going into Game 7, and they would have won Game 7. I love Buehler. I think Buehler's a stud. I think he was great in Vanderbilt as well. But Tampa Bay would have all the momentum, and they would have won the series. And I just think Kevin Cash outcashed himself. Like, you would have thought that I was a Tampa Bay Rays fan when I saw Cash come out and take out the ball from Blake Snell's hands, because he wasn't losing no velocity. He was still in control. The ninth guy that hit the hit off him, it was a daisy that I'm surprised they even made a hit. So maybe Cash thought, oh, the 9 guy just hit my ace. That Mookie Betts is gonna take him deep. I don't think that was the case. I think Blake Snell had total control of that game, and my eyes didn't give me any evidence that it was gonna go otherwise.
Yeah, no, JJ, I agree with you. I was like puzzled when I saw Kevin Cash coming out to the mound. I didn't understand that move at all. And you can't base everything off of analytics, but like we've been saying, 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. That's what in that sentence right there. gives you any reason to take Blake Snell out of that baseball game. I mean, he gave up one hit. The guy gives up one hit, and that's his leash. That's how short his leash was that
We're talking
game.
about
That's
a Cy
ridiculous.
Young guy. A Cy
And then
Young
you
guy.
and then you bring in Nick Anderson, who, mind you, in the Yankees series when he came in that early, he also gave up a run. He gave up a home run. So maybe, Nick Anderson that early in the game isn't that comfortable. And I just totally disagreed with the move, and I thought it was brainless, to be honest.
Here's what I always say. Take the girl home that you took to the dance. Right?
Yeah.
We have this conversation every postseason, like, oh, why do the Yankees start bunting? And it's like, what are you talking about? What? No, they're not going to start bunting all of it. No, stop that.
Can't bunt
My
a ball
question
over the
is,
fence.
right, listen, if Blake Snell's a guy who's going to give you 7 innings, and Nick Anderson's great when he comes in the 7th inning or the 8th inning, why are you doing this why are you putting guys in bad situations?
Yeah.
We see this every postseason. This was the first time starters pitched less innings than relievers as a whole for the postseason.
Yeah, I thought I saw a stat where Snell didn't pitch 6 innings all playoffs. And
that's amazing.
Wrong. That's wrong.
Why wouldn't you want your best guy in your biggest game? I mean, if that's the whole point of what Kevin Cash is doing, right? Matchups. Mm-hmm. My best guy against your best guy. That's the matchup I'm looking for. 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. You weren't going to bring in anybody better. Here's the other thing. Not only going to bring in anybody better, but he's already hot. He's already warmed up and feeling great. This is over managing the likes of which Aaron Boone. I don't even think Aaron Boone would blow that.
No. And, you got to put it into context, too. We just argued, is Mookie Betts the best player in the league? Mookie Betts was coming up, So let's say he gets Mookie out, and then you got Seager next. That would at least make a little more sense to me. Like, all right, you got the guy out. Now let me take my guy out and work the bullpen. That makes a little sense, but it's undefensible, Joe. To me, I think Kevin Cash really blew this team, and it was, you could see it as soon as he got yanked. The happiest people on the field were the Dodgers. They had a sigh of relief. Mookie Betts said after the game he was shocked that they took him out, and boom, right, what happened right after? The whole team deflated, and that was the game after that. Yeah,
Mookie said, Lucas, Mookie's actual quote was, I said, oh my God, thank you, Kevin Cash. What? That is not the response that you want from the other team.
Let me ask you this, though. Does Boone pull Cole in that situation?
No.
If I was Blake Snell, I would have told Kevin Cash, you're going to have to fight me before you take me off this mound because I'm dealing and you're not taking this away from me, because that game was in Blake Snell's hands and he knew it and the team knew it. And as soon as Kevin Cash took that ball out of his hand, he handed the victory to the Dodgers.
But JJ, is it a little on Snell? Because Snell's face obviously was frustration.
Oh, he dropped the best F-bomb in TV history, I want to say.
I don't know. Look, I mean, I've literally seen guys try to keep the ball from the manager who comes out there. Yeah. I've seen guys talk managers out of pulling them from games.
Yeah.
I saw Snell obviously roll his eyes, be upset, drop an F-bomb, but he didn't argue with Kevin Cash. Nope. He didn't say, come on, give me one. Not for nothing. With one out, all he's got to do is get Mookie to roll over on one, turn 2, and you're out of the inning.
Exactly. And I get it, but I think maybe that's just a content of his character. Maybe maybe growing up in the MLB, he was probably always taught, respect your managers, respect your coaches, and I respect that, because I feel like players should always have a level of respect for the guys that train them and their managers. So, I think it would have been a bad scene if he would have been discussing out there. Then it would have been a different narrative. Oh, is Blake Snell making it too much about him instead of what's probably better for the team, So,
yeah, Blake Snell could have easily pulled a Trevor Bauer and launched the ball over the center field wall there, but
but how bad would that have looked, though? It's a World
on the
Series
grand
game.
stage, right?
It's context.
It seems like
right.
he got really mad though after the game and
I
not
would've
on
been
the
pissed.
mound. And I have a problem with that.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's just the way that Blake Snell carries himself. What were you gonna say, JJ?
I was gonna say, like Joe, you said he got mad after the game, not during the game. I feel like in hindsight, it's okay to get mad because maybe he thought Cash may be making the right move. Let's just see how it plays out. If the move would have worked, like we discussed, Cash would have been a genius. It just happened to not work, and I think that we could all agree that a better result probably would have came if Snell would have finished the inning.
Yeah, if they would have won that game, Snell probably would have went up to Cash and been like, you know what, I didn't want to go out of the game, but hey, you made the right call. But obviously that didn't happen. So
in 2003, the Yankees were playing the Red Sox, and manager Grady Little left Pedro Martinez in to face Jason Giambi, who had homered off him earlier, and was the only Yankee that day who had really touched Pedro at all. And Grady came out, and Pedro said, "No, I'm staying in." Giambi put one over the center field fence. The Yankees went on to win the game and won the series the next day. And Grady Little got fired. And you're right, JJ. If the move works, they probably go on and they win the game, and we would have been talking about what happened in Game 7. But it didn't work. And this was a rare time where I feel like Kevin Cash didn't follow the analytics. Because the analytics say two things here: 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, and it also says third time through the lineup, batting averages go up. But this is Blake Snell on the mound.
Exactly.
This is probably the best left-handed pitcher in the American League.
Yeah.
And if you've got a piece of paper with some math equations that says Nick Anderson's a better pitcher than Blake Snell, show it to me. I'd love to read that because I don't believe that exists. So to me, this was Kevin Cash not following the numbers, but trusting his gut. Now I'm going to get Snell out of there. That's the best move. He is the one who famously, after the dust up with the Yankees, said he has a stable of guys that throw 98. And I know he believes in those guys. And he was wrong to believe in those guys. He was especially wrong to believe in Nick Anderson. Who had allowed a major league record, and not a good one, a run in 7 straight relief appearances.
Yeah.
That was the guy who you thought in a 1-0 game with a runner on of the best player in the game and then the MVP of the World Series on deck. You thought that was the time to bring Nick Anderson in? Again, I'm curious. I'm curious what mathematical equation they were looking at where that was the answer.
Well, I'm going to tell you what it was, Joe. This is this is Kevin Cash trying to be too cute, trying to, like I said, he thinks he's the star of the team. He's trying to display to the world, I'm a genius. I'm a manager genius. And if this works, everybody's going to think I'm a freaking awesome matician. I don't have to follow nobody's rules or anything. Everything that I do works. It did not work, Kevin Cash. You screwed your own team over, my man.
Right. And I think, I've heard someone say this, I'm not sure it's Kevin Cash, but, people live and die by analytics, and he certainly died that night by the analytics. They killed him bad.
Yeah.
Well, again, and this is why I say, to me, it's so important, man. I think as a manager, I think you leave the dugout with the thought you're going to pull the guy. And as you're walking out there, you're looking to see his expression and his reaction. Everybody rolls their eyes. I mean, come on. You roll your eyes even if you're getting killed because you're like, if I can get one more guy, I know I can get myself out of this. There's not a pitcher on the mound that doesn't think that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also guys that are, when you get to the mound, I'm like, get the hell out of here. Go back and sit down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I hear a guy say that to me, I pat him on the ass and I go back to the dugout.
Yeah, but I feel like with Snell, he's a little more team oriented. Like I said, I think he was probably worried about the image of the team if he would have done that. Sure, I believe the guys would have backed him up. I feel like the team felt he was the guy at the moment. But the manager's the manager, and that's the guy that they all look up to, so they all respect his opinion. And, hey, he got them to the World Series, so they're just riding his wave.
Right. I mean, it's very unfortunate that this one wrong call came in the World Series in a Game 6 must-win game in the World Series. He managed nearly perfectly up until that point in the entire postseason. And, everyone has their mistakes, but you got to make sure that in those moments, in that critical of a situation, that you're using your mind and you're thinking everything through. And I don't know if Kevin Cash really thought that one all the way through. I think that's something he might have had in mind going into the game, like before the game even started.
When you think about now Game 2 Yankees Rays and the fact that Boone overthought things way too much, that everything he did blew up in his face that day, and he wrecked the rotation for the rest of the week. You think about that move, and you think about this move here. Does it tell you guys a little bit that the only way the Rays could beat the Yankees and or the Dodgers is if they played perfectly? Like, there's no room for error. And I'll say this, look, the Rays dominated the Yankees all year with the same game plan and never deviated at all. But if the Rays don't play a perfect game, they can't beat these teams. They're just too good. They're just too talented. Am I wrong or am I right?
I think you're right. I think the Rays had to pretty much be perfect because the Dodgers, I mean, on paper, the Dodgers sweep this series, but that's not how the Rays work. The Rays don't work from on paper. The Rays are on the field, like Joe said earlier in the show. They come out with guys like Randy Arozarena, Yandy Diaz, guys they get in trades like Tyler Glasnow. Then they just come out and they attack you, and it's guys you don't expect. Like I remember in the Yankees series, Mike Zunino was hitting bombs over the wall, batting ninth. I mean, they can just come at you from anywhere at any time. So that's what's scary about the Rays. But yeah, Joe, you're right. They had to play perfect, and unfortunately, towards the end of the series, it didn't pan out that way.
I got a little message for Kevin Cash. World Series appearances are never guaranteed again. For all we know, this could be the Rays' last World Series appearance for a long time. And if Kevin Cash's time as manager as Tampa Bay passes and he goes to be an old man and he's on his deathbed, I promise you the one thing he's going to think about in that moment is, damn, I should have kept Snell in there a little longer. I promise you he'll have that regret.
Well, nothing but regrets. And if anybody else has regrets, you'd have to think it was Justin Turner of the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers. He got pulled during the game, this Game 6 we're talking about, after the results of his COVID-19 test came back positive.
Yeah. Which was funny timing for me.
Say?
Which was funny timing for me. The fact that the test came back in the middle of the game and he got pulled in the middle of the game. You would think they would try to get those results before the game, so said scenario could be prevented,
Is that baseball getting a little lazy, JJ? Where, maybe we're everyone's fine. Everybody was negative yesterday. We're good to go. And somebody processes them a little bit late and they don't get them back. And it's uh-oh.
Yeah, to the MLB's credit, I think they had gone like 57 straight days without a positive case, if I'm right. So maybe it's a little bit lax. I think the MLB shouldn't get as much heat. I think the Dodgers are more responsible because I think the MLB did their job. They took him out. And then it was the LA Dodgers that allowed him to come back to celebrate with the group. And it really put me in a situation that I was a little uneasy about because, I'm looking at a player like Turner. He was there for those Dodgers runs where it was heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. So to finally win the big game, just had to feel so good. He wanted to be with the team. Those guys are brothers, so I understand wanting to be there for each other. But this is my biggest point, Joe, and I want you to listen to me. It is always the right time to do the right thing. And the right thing for Turner was to worry about the bigger picture, which is I have COVID-19 and I'm going to put my manager who's a cancer survivor at risk if I stay with these guys. So, I think it's going to be an interesting couple of days. once these guys probably get tested again, and we'll see how the results come in. But if there's a breakout between these players, everybody's going to know it was the Dodgers' responsibility, and they're responsible because they left Turner to celebrate with the guys.
By the way, this picture that's up on the screen for people watching the video version of the podcast, you see Turner in the middle. He's got a mask on there. This was taken a few minutes after the first picture where he's maskless. And guess who was sitting next to him? Dave Roberts.
The manager, yeah.
And here's something worse. She's got COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know who she is. I assume his girlfriend or his wife. I can tell you this. She's got COVID.
Yeah, she got it.
I don't mean to laugh. I don't want to laugh.
No,
that's unfortunate.
But
that's stupid right there.
It's a bonehead situation. I mean,
he's stupid.
It's in part of my language. It's not like I saw videos of him sitting and hugging his Dodgers teammates in the dugout post championship celebration. It didn't seem like any of them gave a shit that he was maskless and hugging them. It was just such a bad right, and it was such a bad look for Major League Baseball and especially the Dodgers, JJ. And there's stories like these young guys. They're all in shape, they're all this, they're all that. It can affect you. There's a running back on the Jaguars who has been hospitalized twice and is going to miss the rest of this NFL season because of the effects COVID has had on him. And I consider him quite in shape if he's playing running back in the NFL. So you never know how this disease can affect you. And for something like that, for Justin Turner to go back out on the field, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's just a boneheaded move.
And for Justin Turner, he might have just gave the Dodgers a reason not to bring him back because he is a pending free agent now, and he is a huge fan favorite. The Dodgers love him. I think anybody that likes baseball just loves what he's made out of. He has all the right intangibles. He's a great player to watch. But if the Dodgers needed a reason not to bring him back, he gave it to him.
True that. Really unfortunate that we have to even talk about that. And when you think about, as you said, JJ, however many games in a row, 50, 60, 70, whatever many days in a row. I mean, unbelievably great job. Yes. And then you have this idiot walking around the field, COVID positive. Just an ugly look, unfortunately, to an amazing season. And by the way, kudos to Major League Baseball for pulling this thing off. And I think really setting the stage for all of the other sports that you could do this. You could deal with problems when you had them. You could contain it. They've done such an amazing job. And what a shame that, especially for the Dodgers, to be in such a great mood to find out Justin Turner tested positive. That in and of itself kind of just dampens the whole thing, let alone going onto the field and hugging and kissing and touching people like an idiot. And I'm glad you brought up free agency, JJ, because
that became the story. That itself,
it did. It took away from the long-suffering Dodgers finally.
Yeah.
And again, you sort of touched on it. We don't have to even get into the discussion about getting robbed by the Astros a couple times during that stretch. It's a shame that's what we have to be taught. We should be making fun of Kevin Cash and praising the Dodgers, and instead of praising the Dodgers, you got to talk about how their third baseman's an idiot.
Yeah.
And the fact that him coming out of the game and Rios having to play third base could have potentially been a problem because Rios is like a statue over there at third base. That ball got hit to him right at him. Thank goodness. Guy's got no range.
I'll tell you that. He's no Gio.
Yo.
I mean, my goodness, dude. That guy's got the range of like a 3-year-old. Like there's nothing not good. So he's lucky he didn't really end up hurting the team even more than that. And it would have been interesting because if there would have been a game 7, guess who would have been the third baseman? Not Justin Turner. So things really worked out in LA.
It did,
but you mentioned,
and it did for the very reason that because of the breakout, we weren't certain if game 7 would be the next day or the next day or the next day. So
fair enough.
The Dodgers did luck out that they won because who knows when game 7 would have been played.
Do you remember when I jokingly said, wouldn't it be great if the series just ended 3-3?
Yeah.
Nobody wins. That would have been kind of neat. Anyway, you mentioned the free agency, and I'm glad you did because obviously Masahiro Tanaka, DJ LeMahieu, James Paxton are all officially free agents as, the clock struck midnight the night of the World Series.
Yeah.
big decisions need to be made. And since we're at the end of this show, we're not going to jump into it too much. Obviously, there's some things that have to be figured out. DJ, I think, being at the top of the list. I think another huge problem on that list is Gary Sanchez. That's something that needs to be addressed. Paxton and Tanaka, whether either one of those guys, is on the Yankees' radar. There's always the Gleyber Torres shortstop situation. If you bring LeMahieu back, there's a lot of talk about moving Gleyber back. So there's a lot of issues. We know JT Realmuto's out there. There's quite a few names that I know Yankee fans are hoping, might be joining this team. I would say temper expectations. So what we're going to do over the course of the next few weeks, since I don't expect there to be a ton of activity free agency wise, right out of the gate here, I think teams are going to really need to take a look at their finances first and foremost. And I think that's going to be a process. General manager meetings will be in December. I don't think you're going to see much before then. I really don't. Maybe, maybe teams just keeping I think you're going to see a lot of those, arbitration numbers starting to get exchanged, but I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of stuff early on. So what we're going to do is episode by episode, we're going to review each area of the Yankees: outfield, infield, behind the plate, rotation, bullpen. We'll talk about who's going to be there in 2021. We'll talk about what minor league options might be there. We'll talk about realistically what sorts of free agents would fit the Yankees' plans. This isn't going to be we're getting Lindor, Realmuto. It's not going to be that kind of show because we're not those kind of people. That's awful, and we hate that. So we're just going to break it down week by week. Obviously, any new information or, if there are rumors or if signings happen, we'll keep you up to date all along with that. And that's about it, though.
To your point, Joe, we're not that show. We keep it real on the roll call. We're not going to feed you fantasies. And I think that's something that fans need to keep in mind. The COVID season really did mess up with the revenue that the MLB is making. So the money that they made this year is a very low number compared to what they usually get. So that's something that every team needs to figure out what's the number that came in and how we can work with that.
Yep, you're right. A lot of lost money this season, but I think baseball will get through it. I think they have enough resources to get through something like this.
But no matter the revenue, those Yankee hats sell like hotcakes.
Yep, worldwide.
Oh yeah,
always will. All right, well, that's going to do it then for this week's episode. I hope you'll join us. Like I said, all off season, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest happenings. Make sure you visit us at clovercrestmedia.com/The Roll Call Podcast. You can also check out the Facebook page at The Roll Call Podcast. We're on Twitter at The Roll Call Show, and you can check us out on Insta, the old IG at The Roll Call Podcast.
Oh yeah,
very excited to be wrapping up a 2020 season we weren't sure was even going to happen. Certainly didn't end the way we wanted it to.
Yeah.
Didn't end the way Justin Turner wanted it to. Well, maybe kind of. Yeah. Anyway, great 2020, guys. What a great season. Thank you so much for all your amazing input. I look forward to a fun off season and a run for a 28th championship in 2021. So
and don't forget, no matter how many championships people win, we still have 27.
That'll always forever be our Yankees fan argument, and people hate it, but so what? It's a fact.
Facts. Don't care.
Right?
About your stupid team. For JJ Vargas and Lucas Balduck, I'm Joe Aguirre. Thank you so much for checking out this week's Roll Call Podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share.
Can I get a roll call? Let's get it on. Hit the field, let's play ball. Go home, we stand tall.
yeah, we back. Oh, yeah, we back. 2020 division, Yanks back on the train track. Had to let the chances go, but we welcome and Garrett Cole. Judge back with the gavel, bringing Giancarlo up on these corners. Look at the information they gonna K-back awesome. Boy in the shell, they on the corners with your wrestler, man. You seeing Chesto play too. Severino in rotation, Paxton throwing K's too. Fully loaded. We got the airlies wide open. One game at a time, we stay focused. Bronx Bombers on a mission. World Series chasing, taking the division. No time for wasting. Again, first placing.